Hey everybody, this is New Script on the Block. My name is Nero Manalo and I am joined by Alyssa Eshelman. And our guest screenwriter is Jim, I'm gonna murder your last name again, Hahne?
Hahne.
That's
Hahne.
Hahne.
You know
it's Jim
what's
Hahne,
funny
guys.
Is, I know this is going to sound weird because it actually semi-relates to this. I'm a descendant from the Pawnee, and so when you say Hahne, I'm like, oh, Pawnee, like
there
it's easy.
There it is. That's how you do it.
Okay, my name is Nero Manalo again, and I am one of the creative members of Arizona Studios, on the creative team of Arizona Studios. That means I usually am the DP or camera operator or writer or editor, illustrator, all these different things for the studio. And Alyssa, if you want to introduce yourself and what you do for Arizona Studios.
I'm a production manager primarily, so I'm a production manager at Arizona Studios, which means I do all of the pre-production planning and pulling things together to get projects off the ground. I work as an assistant director pretty often, but I love screenwriting, so that's a lot of what I do in my personal time. And I have written a handful of pieces that hopefully someday we'll read on the show. But I'm really interested to hear a little bit more about our guest today, Jim. If you could tell us a little bit about just your background and maybe how long you've been doing this and what got you here.
Oh yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. That's such a long and crazy story. I knew that I wanted to tell stories when I was a young kid. I would sneak away on my dad's word processor and I would just write stories, you know. And I remember he caught me one time. He caught the files. He didn't catch me in his study, but he caught me. No, it was I was in the living room
to something and he's
hanging
just
out
writing.
or something. Yeah, no. And my mom's name is Josephine, so he's like, Joe, Jim's been writing something.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
Oh God, no. I don't want this life for my child.
And they're reading all of this stuff and they're quiet, and then he comes out and he said, Jim, come here. These are really good.
Oh, nice.
My parents were always incredibly supportive of what I wanted to do. And then when around the same time, around when I was about 8 years old, I discovered that I loved movies. And it wasn't really actually until after I got out of high school and went into college at SEC that I kind of figured out that I could write movies.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. But
Two passions?
Right. Just push them together.
Oh wow.
So I did that, and I didn't think that screenwriting would be a passion per se. I know that maybe sounds weird, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Hopefully not to the people listening to this podcast.
Right, yeah. No, but it's I knew that a script was a thing. It's not that I wasn't familiar with that. It's just I didn't really know what went into it, and I always thought about the production end of things. I thought about cinematography, I thought about directing, I thought about producing, I thought about the acting and special effects and the music and all of that, but I didn't really think about the creation of a story or the structuring of a story. But that was a passion in and of itself for me.
You mean filmmaking
story.
in general?
Well, no, just storytelling. I love filmmaking, but just storytelling in general. And so I had kind of a clunky start when I was doing it, and I tried to get on the track to do film production at ASU, and I didn't get into that program. So then instead I went into film and media studies at ASU when I was done with SEC, and they had a screenwriting track there as well, but their viewpoint on film was completely different than the production side of things. And I can't speak to that, but I can speak to what the film and media studies was like. And that was really when we started looking at things like ethical questions when it comes to looking at film, and race, ethnicity, and stuff like that, which is now that's in the forefront of the conversation in the public, right?
Right.
So I was exposed to that, pretty early on, and gosh, I bounced around a lot of different story ideas and for a long time, and then actually it was just right out of college, I got hired by a producer to write a script. He had this idea, he wanted to do a hockey story with like if it were the natural, but for hockey.
Okay.
Right? And because that doesn't really exist. There's hockey movies, but there's not really like that uplifting, quintessential, definitive hockey story. And he's like, I want to do that with this Native American kid. And this guy, Pete Wooster is his name. He came up with all these characters. Wanted to do this Native American spin on it, because that's where hockey originates from, apparently.
Oh.
So I didn't know anything.
That's a fun fact of the day.
Fun fact, everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about it going in. I mean, I
So you're not like a big hockey fan or anything? Like
no,
that's not how this happened?
No, I don't actually really. I'm not a sports person. I don't enjoy
so funny.
sports.
You know,
at
this
all.
would probably be my first sports script I've ever written. Ever read. You know,
Yeah.
so I was like,
Okay.
It's
my
actually
gosh,
not like a
yeah.
super pop, well, which is not surprising actually. If you meet a lot of people in the independent film industry, they're not exactly the most, like, oh, I'm super
Sure.
into
Yeah,
sports.
no. We have the same experience.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, mostly theater nerds writing stories about,
death
people who
and
are like
revenge and
themselves.
depression.
Yeah.
Revenge.
So in 2012, after some rewrites, we sold it. We sold the script to a studio in LA, and then it got shelved.
Oh.
And a while afterwards, we got the rights back to the story.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm wondering
Yeah.
how the terms of that work.
I would love to go into the details, and I don't know how much I'm actually even
I
allowed to
gotcha.
say about like.
Don't want to ask anything that gets
right,
too political
yeah,
or
no, or like,
confrontational.
I don't want to say don't want to mention any names or anything
Oh
like
yeah.
that. So.
But the point is this script at one point or another was this version of the script picked up by that company, or it's since changed?
It was something I had written this and this is just something about me as a writer as well. I never go into a script considering the rating. I never go into a script I try to keep all of that noise out.
When you say rating, what do you mean? Like audience
our
opinion?
audience,
or?
well, like, would it be R, PG-13?
Oh,
Hollywood
okay.
loves high.
You mean the
what is it?
marketability?
Marketability, right?
You're not really concerned about that. You want to get the story out there.
Not when I start writing. I can't get that into my head, or else I'm going to try and artificially contrive something.
Yeah, like shape
that's-
it to be for a specific audience.
That's going to turn into something that I might not even genuinely feel.
Yeah.
By the end of all of the rewrites, of course, we were doing things according to what the studio wanted us to do and stuff like that. And it was very Lifetime,
Okay.
if you will. And the first draft that I had done was just kind of, it was violent. It was probably going to get a pretty heavy R rating and stuff like that. And they wanted us to cut back and make it more family. And then, of course, now, what's more popular are like the Deadpools and the Logans and stuff like that are coming out there like,
things
hey,
are getting edgier because they know they can.
Yeah,
You're like, we can make money doing
just
this.
go there. Like, just go there and tell the story, and the audience will show up.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of stories that I've kind of worked on here and there. 2 years ago, just kind of on a whim, Pete called me back and just said, "Hey, have you thought about Whitefeather, trying to sell it again, because we had gotten the rights back?"
Okay.
And I said no. I said I don't want to go through that again.
hurt.
I'm not interested.
I'm not ready for a new
like,
relationship.
We're not. Yeah, I'm not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "No, I really think that we could sell this." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, then go ahead, but I'm not gonna
You're
rewrite
gonna do
it.
it. Like, you're gonna go push this,
I'm
and
not
I'm
gonna
gonna just
I'm not gonna rewrite
yeah.
this thing. I've got other things I want to work on."
Yeah.
For sure.
And finally, I called him because I had an idea. I wanted to change the story completely around, and I didn't even know exactly what I wanted to do. But I never identified with the protagonist to begin with, and I really wanted to play around with some of the stuff at home with abuse and what family do you belong to versus the one that you want to choose to belong to, and what are you meant to be, what do you want to do versus what are you obligated to do,
Yeah.
and what it's like to be on all sides of the spectrum of that scenario. And then I wanted to kind of throw in a little bit of like this fairy tale element in there as well, of like destiny and
Yeah. Which
know.
sports movies do always have that kind of like
Sure.
that sense of hope.
Sure. Yeah. Hope for sure. Absolutely. And then I wanted to just get in there and kind of dig around and kind of see. I didn't know if it was going to be a short at first or whatever. And I kind of arrived at this point, and I was like, I'm going to stop right now.
Yeah.
And then if we want to film this or shop this around, it can be almost like a teaser. Like, hey, I can write more.
Oh,
there can
okay.
be like another whole 2 acts that come after.
Yeah, I'm
this.
curious because the audience doesn't know this yet, but this script is about like 18 pages, I think.
Yeah, I
it's
think
a little
something like
under
that.
20.
Yeah.
So I'm
18.
curious, when you originally sold it before you went and started playing with it again, how long was the original piece versus where it's at right now?
It was 117 pages.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
So you really cut back a lot.
Oh yeah, we went all the way through to the original male character was playing NHL hockey and went that track.
Okay.
And that was kind of, I always liked the first section where the character was meeting the hockey legend
Yeah.
and then kind of,
Just meeting that idol character.
yeah, well.
And again, we haven't gotten into the script, so I know the audience is missing some of this context, but once we do, folks, it's going to make a lot more sense.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Sure.
Is that our cue to get in?
Yeah,
or-
I mean, I'd love to take a read at it. I mean, I feel like now we understand kind of like the history of how this got to our table.
Sure.
And a little bit about you, and that helps us understand like the way you choose to write and your perspective. So first of all, before we get into it, I do have to cover just some basic guidelines. So at the end of the script read, we'll probably ask you a handful of questions to help us understand, maybe choices you made with the script or the characters. We may have like technical things like that as well. We may provide certain feedback. Everything that we say here on the show, it's take it or leave it. You won't hurt our feelings if you don't listen to what we say. That's okay. And we're open to hearing whatever you have to say about it, maybe things that you like or things that have changed that you don't feel as strongly about now that it's changed. So we're interested to learn from you, and we're excited to share our ideas, but certainly at no point in this do we ever want to criticize or put down a writer. Every time our goal is just to share new ideas with each other so that we can all grow.
Oh, well, that sounds exciting.
Awesome.
Let's mix it up.
Okay, that sounds great. We'll go ahead and get into it. So whenever you're ready, Jim, if you want to start us off.
With the log line?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
All right.
I completely forgot.
No, that's all right. I'm happy to do it. Strong Cloud White Feather is a teenage girl trapped between the pressure of needing to keep her family together as it is being torn apart by her abusive father and the dream of one day playing professional hockey. When she learns of hockey legend and Stanley Cup winner Bobby Johnson living nearby, she seeks his coaching while trying to find her place in life.
Awesome. So that's just a brief summary for you folks, those of you who aren't familiar with what a log line is, and then we'll hop into the full script right now.
Absolutely. All right, this is White Feather. We're beginning interior, ice rink, day, a practice hockey team. Players glide out onto freshly polished ice, all huge guys, agile and swift, confident and with speed. They skate.
When you're out there like that, there's a moment where everything stops and you realize you don't feel the blades or the ice anymore.
The players form plays and execute them, rocketing through the rink.
You're breathing smooth. Your head clears.
An offensive player shoots the puck at the goal. Goalie blocks.
You're free.
The offensive player slams full body into the goalie. They break into fisticuffs. Interior, rundown apartment complex, day. A fist cuts through the air and lands on an adolescent Native American face. White Feather. They call her White and she's 17 and in hockey clothes. Her face is kind, but obscured now with rage. This isn't the first time her old man has hit her. Far, far from it, as seen from the bruises. Ma forces herself between them, wraps an arm around White, and reaches out her pleading hand.
Enough.
White pulls free from Ma's grip and paces. Beat. Gonna let your Ma take your licks for you?
I don't want to fight.
What's wrong? Aren't you my little hockey player? White recoils. Old man won this one. Good one, Daddy-O. Keep him in line. On to Ma. Get up, bitch.
Bitch.
What?
Bitch, slut, whore, skank.
Ma rises to her feet. Old man regards her and considers. Beat. Old man laughs. Come on, what? Don't tell me I hurt your feelings. Don't tell me I hurt your precious goddamn feelings. Ma holds her ground. It's not funny.
Leave her alone.
Old man's not laughing anymore. 2 against 1. Okay.
Oh my God. The biggest faux pas of recording. That was my cell phone, folks.
No, that was the pleasant sounds of the
Outdoors.
We've got a sound technician,
We're
Foley artist in the
establishing.
background here.
I'm sorry, folks. Pick it up.
Old man's not laughing anymore. 2 against 1. Okay. Old man backhands Ma. White snaps. She balls her fist and swings. She wraps her old man in the chin. Ma screams. This scream is of a new horror. She's turning into her father. Old man recoils for a beat and gets his bearings. Brief quiet. White caught between triumph and terror. Old man wipes his lips and stifles hyperventilation. Then he turns on White. Oh, you goddamn crazy fucking bitches. Old man advances on White. She readies. Knock at the door.
Who is that?
Old man collects his cool. Shut up. Exterior, house on the pond. Day. Snow-capped, pleasant, serene. A St. Bernard pants on the porch. The dog tilts his head. Someone on the horizon. White hikes the hill and arrives at the frozen-over pond. She sets down her things in a rucksack and plops herself down with her back to an evergreen. She slips off her shoes and laces her skates and pulls up a hockey stick, very old, hand-cut red oak, a single feather tied to its handle, frayed and bent, white in color. She spies the dog and waves at him. He wags his bushy tail. White ungloves her hand and grazes it gently along the pond ice. Deep breath, and she's up. She flips a hockey puck, and it thuds down, spinning. She catches the thing with her stick and pushes it along. Skating. She's a natural. White practices. She skates this way and that, twisting and dodging invisible opponents. She shoots a goal between 2 trees, and the puck bounces off the left one and back at her. It glides back her way. She takes a knee and laughs. She looks to the dog.
Not quite.
The dog stands and races off the porch directly toward her. She turns to catch him and pet him, but he stops just shy of her, scoops up the puck in his teeth, and trots back to the porch where he drops it playfully between his sprawled out front paws. The dog waits. White swallows and steps out hard onto the hard ground in her skates, carefully tiptoeing toward the house. She reaches the dog and kneels in front of him.
So which is it? Are you Beethoven or are you Cujo?
She pats his head and White swipes the puck, quickly pocketing it. At least he's not Cujo.
What did you think?
No response. Typical. Okay, so he's not Beethoven either.
I mean, I'm a little rusty. My pass is up at the rink, you know. Did you take that into consideration?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Yep.
'Cause you're a dog, and I'm just the crazy person talking to you.
Beat.
Okay then. Nice talk.
Ben 3.
White spins and comes face to face with Bobby Johnson, the elderly but sturdy man of the house. White can't read him.
Hello. Wait, why 3?
I don't know. Lots of dogs' names Ben, I guess. I wanted him to know which one he is.
How long have you lived up here?
You know what? Maybe I'll ask the questions.
Bobby ups and steps and asserts his place beside his dog, Ben 3 apparently. He studies White for a moment. Hockey get-up, even up to the fresh bruises on her cheeks and a black eye to boot. Not just a fish out of water. She might as well be dressed like this in church. It would be no stranger. His eyes brighten and his harsh features actually give way to affection. He likes her.
Actually, Look, don't worry about it, kid.
Bobby turns to go inside.
I'm White.
That stops him.
What?
Strong Cloud Whitefeather. It's a boy's name.
Okay, well, good to know. Good to know you, White. Thanks for being nice to Ben.
Can I show you something?
I've seen enough today, thank you.
This time he moves quicker inside.
Hey, wait, Bobby.
And she's got his attention again. His eyes form two fixed slits. His demeanor transforms to immediate hostility.
All right, enough.
I gave myself away, I know, but I don't know who you are. I do know who you are. I had to do something. I had to get here and talk to you, and I thought I'd figure it out once I saw you, but I haven't. But right now I want to show you some of my skating because I'm going to go pro, and I can't do that on my own.
Bobby's expressions twist and mix from shock, anxiety, confusion, anger, and finally on resolve.
Darling, on your own is the only way.
And with that, he slams the door in White's face. She deflates and drops beside Ben 3. She motions to put her arm around the pup when the door opens again. White looks up to Bobby with precious hope. Bobby ignores her.
Come on, Ben 3.
Ben 3's up and inside without a thought, and Bobby's inside again. White huffs.
Fuck. Oh, great job, White. Yeah? You think so? I know, so stupid. You show up here like a creep, and you get treated like a creep. I'm not a creep. Yeah, but that was definitely creepy, and now you're talking to yourself, you dummy. Nice. Well, the dog's gone, so who are you supposed to talk to anyways? Nobody, just me. Rock and roll, baby, rock and roll.
Interior, house on the pond, day. Bobby holds the curtains open a pinch with his finger and watches White talk to herself. He softens again and sniffs a quiet laugh.
Got a fever? Or did someone actually make Bobby Johnson laugh?
Bobby's spell is broken by his 50-something dark-skinned bombshell. Bess pierced through the other window opposite the door. White's still there, chatting away.
Scrappy gal. She's upsetting my ulcer. You're an ulcer.
Bobby scowls at her.
Can't you go bother someone else? Yeah, maybe I'll go out and strike up a chat with your new girlfriend. Bess, for God's sake. Why her, Bobby? What's got you bothered?
Exterior, house on the pond, day. White bites her nails and taps her feet to an imagined song in her head. Here comes the door again. White's off her ass and back up to balancing on her skates. This time, Bess is shouldered up next to Bobby.
Hi.
Bess beams at White.
Hello there.
Bobby grits his teeth.
All right, kiddo. Let's see your stuff.
On the pond. Series of shots. White is swift and graceful, but pushes off a concentrated, determined ferocity. She handles the puck even better. Bobby steps out onto the ice with sure footing that defies his age. He doesn't slip. White stops and starts. She skates, circling around opponents that aren't there. White passes the puck to Bobby's foot and he kicks it back to her without losing a step. White skids to a stop and looks up, smiling at Bobby. Bobby looks away for a beat, then looks back to White with a smirk. White beams, breathing heavy from skating, feeling free and complete. She's in her element here. Exterior, house on the pond, day. White rests with her feet spread out on the porch steps. Ben 3 with his head in her lap, and she pets him. Bobby stretches out on a porch chair, pulled up and facing her. Bess brings out hot chocolates for each of them and joins Bobby's side, her arm around his shoulders.
Where'd you learn to skate like that?
Back in North Dakota, my grandpa and I would play a lot. He lived with us back then. This was his.
White lifts the hockey stick and turns it over gently, showcasing its intricate, ornate, delicate craftsmanship.
It's not much, but it's what I got.
Oh, I think you got a lot more than that. A lot more if you carried with you.
The proud joy in White's expression drops.
Yeah.
Bess leans in.
White, sweetheart?
White knows where this is headed. Tears well and overflow down onto her cheeks.
Yeah.
You didn't get those bruises from playing hockey, did you?
A police car rolls up, and White is at her feet. Officer Gary Mann stomps out and cautiously approaches. Now Bobby slows upright too. White?
It's me.
How about a ride home?
Gary? What is this?
Just getting a kid home safe, boss.
Hang on, I'll get my stuff.
Bobby rests his hand protectively on White's shoulder.
We'll get her home, Gary.
White pulls away.
It's okay.
No can do, Bobby.
It's fine.
White collects her things.
Thank you.
White reluctantly marches to the car. Bobby and Bess watch intently. Man throws an arm over White's shoulder and escorts her to the back seat where she tosses in her rucksack. Man opens the front passenger door for her and White gets in. Man steps around to his side and waves back up to Bobby.
Call me, Gary.
Sure, boss. Man's in the car now and starts it. White keeps her eyes fixed on Bobby and Bess, and as Man three-point turns out of there, and as they drive away, White watches the now empty frozen pond shrink and disappear into the horizon. Exterior, North Dakota woods, night. A Native American elder, White's grandfather, in full tribal dress, looms over a crackling fire. In a circle around the fire is the rest of the tribe. White is with them. Grandfather, Great Spirit, all over the world, the faces of living things are alike. With tenderness, they have come up out of the ground. Grandfather shakes a bundle of sage over the flame until it smokes. Look upon your children that they may face the winds and walk the good road to the day of quiet. He waves the smoke over White's heart, over the right side of her head and the left. He waves the smoke on White's shoulders and down her legs to her feet. Grandfather, Great Spirit, fill us with the light. Give us the strength to understand and the eyes to see. Teach us to walk the soft earth as relatives to all that live. White solemnly accepts the spiritual gift. Rise. White respectfully climbs to her feet. Grandfather reaches forward and lays the handmade hockey stick in White's open hands. May your future be as bright as the great sun. May you be proud of who you are, a daughter of your people. It's morning. A blue mist hovers over the leaf-covered earth. White and Grandfather hike through the woods, White wrapped in a blanket.
I'm going to miss you.
It is good to miss people sometimes. I think it's to keep us humble, remind us who we are.
Will Dad ever remember?
Maybe. White hangs her head. And maybe you will be the one to show him the light home.
What if I can't?
Then you have to decide.
Decide what?
Grandfather stops and faces White. To keep or break your family apart. White's eyes search for a concrete answer. Is it fair to have such weight put on such young shoulders? I have something for you. Grandfather pulls a white eagle feather and offers it. You know what this means to have bestowed on you.
I do.
But I can think of no one who deserves it more. White smiles. She receives the feather in open hands. Insert. White carefully ties the feather on the handle of her blessed hockey stick. Exterior, house on the pond, day. Bobby and Officer Man sip coffee. Ben 3 between them.
How bad is it, Gary?
You know I can't talk about that.
Okay, so it's bad.
Stay out of it, Johnson. Interior, house on the pond, day. A wall shrine dedicated to Bobby's hockey years. Sports page clippings, awards, certificates, photographs, a rack of hockey sticks, and in the center, the Stanley Cup. He really was an icon. Bobby studies his legacy.
She deserves a chance.
And you're going to give it to her? But does Bobby adore or abhor these things? From the way he stares, it's impossible to tell. There's knocking. Interior, White's apartment, day. White's old man opens the door to reveal Bess. The fuck are you?
Excuse yourself?
Bess nudges past his hulking presence and looks to White, who now stands between her parents and the room. She looks back to her mother, then fixes on Bess.
White baby, you come on with me.
Old man shoves his face into Bess's bubble. Bess pushes past him, and old man tries to shut the door, but it's too late. Bess is inside, and old man's livid. I don't know who you are, but you got about 5 seconds to get the fuck out of my place. Tears on White's cheeks.
Bess, please.
White, listen to me now. I don't know you well yet, and I know that. But you don't deserve this. You have a life to live and gifts. You have gifts, baby, and you can share them with the world if you just dare to, if you just take the risk.
Old man is so overwhelmed by the audacity for just long enough for White to think. Old man is very temporarily rendered incapacitated. Bess holds her ground and stands fearless.
I don't know.
Ma overcomes her fear.
White.
White looks to her mother, and we see what White sees. A beautiful, shining, vibrant light of a woman, no longer bruised, no longer hunched over with a heavy heart and a heavy hanging head. She stands upright. The apartment darkens and time slows.
Ma, it's me, baby.
White throws her arms around her mother. Ma folds into the embrace and kisses her daughter on the cheek.
Don't worry, Ma. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to look after you. He can change, Ma. He can get better. Maybe he can. I'll help him. I'll do whatever I have to. No.
White pulls back.
But Grandpa said, Grandpa loved you. And that doesn't mean he knew what was best for you. I can't leave you. Fear. What? It's just fear, baby. Come with me. You know I can't. What do I do? Don't be afraid. But I am. Quick, now.
White comes to, her mother still feet away from her, almost cowering. Bess standing fearlessly against White's vicious old man, now rearing to throw Bess a right hook. White's eyes widen. Old man throws his punch at Bess, and she catches his arm and twists, throwing him over onto his back. He crumples to the ground with a startling honk. White steps up to Bess.
I want to do the right thing.
I know.
I want to live. I want to play hockey.
Bobby will teach you.
White turns her back to Ma.
I love you, Ma.
Ma snaps out of her terrified trance, awake.
I love you, baby.
Old man shakes off his shock and climbs to his knees. Slam, crack. White breaks grandfather's hockey stick over old man's back, and this time he's down for the count. White drops the broken pieces and rushes to her mother. They fall to their knees in full embrace. White breaks down sobbing.
It's okay. It's going to be okay, White, my strong cloud. I hate that name, but it's yours. What about Dad? He'll have to decide.
Exterior, house on the pond. Bess drives up the gravel road. Bobby and Ben 3 have been waiting. Bobby springs to his feet. Interior, White's apartment, day. Old man is still sprung out, incapacitated on the floor. Ma pulls White up to her feet.
He'll have to decide what kind of man he wants to be.
Exterior, house on the pond, day. Bess climbs confidently out of the car.
Does he want to keep us?
White steps out of the car carrying her rucksack.
Or does he want to break us apart?
Interior, White's apartment, day. Ma kisses White on the forehead.
Live your life. Be a child. Laugh. Dance. Play hockey.
White looks to Bess.
We'll take care of her, Ma.
Later, Ma cries, curled up in the corner of her bedroom, the door barricaded. There's knocking. Ma shudders, knocking, beat. Hello? Are you in there? It's me, it's Gary. Ma shakes off her fear and breathes a slow, trembling exhale of relief. Exterior, house on the pond, day. Bess rests on the porch with Ben 3. Bobby steps out onto the ice, as sure and confident as always. White waits in her hockey getup, ready to play. Bobby offers White one of his old hockey sticks. It's not handmade, but it carries the stories of historical matches, wins, losses, victory and defeat, fear and love, family and friends, of teams long disbanded. White ties the eagle feather to the handle. She sets down the base of the stick along the ice, the puck waiting, full of potential energy. White looks up to Bobby, her coach.
Hope you brought your game today, kiddo.
Bring it on, Pops. Bring it on.
All right.
Whew. You have a very lovely voice.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Very
But
kind to
the
say.
narration was crisp and nice,
Yeah.
easy. Yeah,
It's very
smooth
nice to
like
say.
butter.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Arizona Studios. Arizona Studios, a full-service video content specialist. We're here to illuminate your message and compel your audience to take the right action. For more information, head to our website at arizonastudios.com and be sure to tune in for more content on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All right, so I think the first thing we can do is just kind of get into questions, anything that might give us a little bit more context for things or areas that maybe we need some of your input on to better understand what your goals were.
Great.
Okay.
You want to go ahead?
You want to go first?
I mean,
went
I really
first
want a
last
drink
time.
of water, so.
Okay. Maybe I'll say this then. Kind of working backwards. Last time we kind of worked like from the first page, but going backwards, there are just kind of like a couple of things like that. Like my brain understands what's happening, but my brain also doesn't understand like where I'm at.
Right.
Especially with how White Feather sees her mom. That to me seems like some sort of vision she's having of what she wants her mom to be and also to say. Correct?
Is it correct?
Well,
how do you read that?
So my interpretation is that like there seems to be a definite contrast between how we saw Ma in the beginning, taking hits and everything like that, and looking bruised and battered and stuff. But then we're seeing the description where that's gone and it's like almost a completely different person.
Absolutely.
Especially since like after that vision or whatever it was, we go back to Ma and she's like, I think we see her
kind of scared
cowering.
again.
Yeah,
Cowering
cowering
on the
again.
floor,
And then part of me is like kind of like weirded out by it like later, maybe it's just because now I'm like always concerned for Ma because she's always being beaten down. Later we see she's barricaded herself in her bedroom. Like, where was that transition? How did she get back into her bedroom when she was with Bess, White, the old man, and
I'm just trying to understand, like, in the form of a question. Like, is the question if that segment where it seems like her characteristic changes so much that that is, in fact, a vision of what White wants to hear or see, or is that just a shift of tonality in the character in that scene? Is that what you're asking?
I guess. Maybe I'm just kind of... I don't know how to put this as a question,
Can
but
I ask
I'm just
you a
kind of
question?
confused
Yes,
where
please,
I was.
go ahead.
Go
Can I
ahead,
ask
go
you
ahead.
a question? So this is I'm gonna start with a brief statement, but then I do have a question.
For sure.
I am fascinated with the disparity between the internal logic of like the scene and the story and the emotional logic. And I don't have a clear answer.
Okay.
What I do as a writer is I play in the gap between those things. And if something makes emotional sense to me, I run with it. Even if it doesn't necessarily make complete logical sense in the scene. So my question is that what you're feeling is bumping for you?
Just that emotional tonality of that occurrence, that what's happening on the paper. Like, to me, I think it's good elements, emotional elements for White to experience, as a character, for sure. But like, how should I put this? Like, it is kind of coming from like right field or whatever.
Sure.
Like, yeah,
yes,
it is.
Of course.
It seems very sudden, and
Yes.
I guess.
Real quick, just to be clear, I read it as if like time slows down.
Okay.
And like the lights in the room just kind of go dark and there's almost a spotlight. And I'm reading way too much into it.
Oh, that
but
sounds
like
right to
really
me.
looking at Ma as she like rises, and I almost feel like it's this weird like Mother Mary type of thing where it's like she's embodying the almost hero that White needs right now, like the guidance or the answer she needed. And then we go back to reality, and now it's almost like White has to take on those decisions that she wasn't prepared to make, that the Ma in her head convinces her that she needs to make. And I could be totally off in that interpretation.
In fact, I would say that that's, and part of this process for me is the discovery as well, right?
Yeah.
And this is what's exciting to me. So on the page I get to play, and then we get to talk about it, and then it's like there's a lot of discovery for me as well. But what I'm interested in here is the sort of transcendent nature of maternal love. Mm-hmm. And that can awaken inside of us. I mean, how many times have we been in a situation in life when we hear our parents speaking to us?
Yeah.
You know, is that their love?
Yeah.
And that is a little mystical, but it is, of course, again, part of a fairy tale element of the sports genre story. But then you're right. But it is White who has to make the decision in the end.
Yeah.
Is she going to act on that, or
just keep letting these things happen?
That's absolutely right.
Now, I will say, like, from that perspective, because I don't dislike that, like the way I read it, but I also feel like the only thing about it that feels out of place is we don't really get a sense of, like, strong connections between White and her mother up to this point in the story, which, again, I have the context of this is a much shorter piece compared to the original works.
Sure.
And obviously I can tell that, you know, like some of the characters and things probably had further development when you were looking at the grander scope of it. But I almost feel like we get to see so much as the audience personality out of a character like Bess. And because we get that development with her, like, it almost feels like unusual that in White's eyes, her mother is this person speaking to her, when we saw her have a much deeper engagement with both her grandfather and with Bess and Bobby. So it almost seems like, even though I like the concept of it, and I do honestly agree with that whole our parents speaking to us emotionally even when they're not verbally or physically present, just because those are people who often influence us, I almost feel like that scene to me makes more sense because of the context of knowing her relationship with her grandfather, if it was him speaking to her. But again, like, that's just my perspective on it. Yeah, and I know that you took kind of this segment out, so I guess I'm curious, in the original work, like, was there lead up before this part of the story and then also end to this, or was this really where it started at the beginning?
No. So the mother character was always incredibly important to me. She was sort of the pivotal character of the entire story. And it's true that she takes this major backseat at the beginning of the story. And I'm referring to when this was a feature. Yeah. So when it was a full 117 pages, almost 2 hours long, the first act, to see a woman being abused and silenced, and she's quiet, doesn't speak up and stand up for herself, that's all there. And then White decides to leave. Okay, so in a feature-length version of this, White decides to leave, goes and plays hockey in New York, faces failure, faces all of this stuff, and then realizes the almost mistake of leaving family behind, right? My mom is being abused. That was wrong for me to do.
Well, not mistake. It's like guilt then.
Guilt.
Yeah.
Right, but that's always seen as it's a perceived mistake, right?
Yeah.
So, but guilt. I thank you for bringing that up. That's absolutely correct. Is like the guilt of that, and that brings White back, and having that conversation with her mother, his mother back in the day, right? Yeah. Was at that point, no, you leaving gave me the strength to leave your father. You leaving inspired me to do this stuff. It's not your responsibility to carry me. Yeah. You showed me how to, right. So that was the payoff there. And then it was like, so then White has this opportunity to have this new relationship with her mother that wasn't present before. And so then it's almost like when you start to live a healthy life, you can become a model for others who are suffering. And then hopefully there's the hope that perhaps they can then step out of their own cages and do something about it. So that was the payoff there at a feature length.
In the feature, yeah.
But I was so motivated to include the emotional payoff there to kind of encapsulate this into a short. And so when I wrote this scene, and then I kind of stopped, I had to go back and kind of make this a climax.
Yeah.
And so that was when
Which
I sort of so then I included back in this fantasy element
that
of sort of
maternal fantasy character.
That's absolutely right. And you're right, the grandfather doesn't pay off, right? He doesn't come back. But I was also playing with this idea of you've got this character in the middle, White being kind of like a blank slate, right? Like there's impressions being put onto her.
She's just a kid.
Right, just a kid, right, just a child, right. And I liked this idea of all of these conflicting voices. Which voice do I listen to?
Well, how you were saying about, the grandfather, I almost saw him more of a kind of like a harbinger of conflict that she is going to have to deal with eventually. Something that it's like almost a reminder of like, hey, this is who you are and these are the challenges that you're going to have to face, because it's family. You can't escape, that.
You can't ignore this inevitable confrontation.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
I liked that element, but I will say, and I could have totally misread it, like maybe I was off on the way I read it, but my interpretation when he was talking, like part of it was confusing to me because I thought I almost felt like you're holding the victim accountable for the actions of the abuser, and I thought it was how do I put it, strange coming from a, almost parental, tangent parental figure in your life to, not talk down on the father who is, being abusive and falling off of the path, and to kind of hang it over the kid to be like, look, it's up to you if you're, and I also thought the phrasing of if you're going to break the family or pull it apart or something to that effect, that also to me was it seemed harsh in the sense that it's basically telling her either you're going to make this work despite the fact that you're being abused, or you're going to break up your family by taking action, which it's I understand that that's what's happening, but for an adult to say that to a child seemed whoa, Grandpa, cut her some fucking slack, man.
Yeah. That could also be a cultural thing because,
which I'd have no idea. Yeah,
right. That's something that I guess I would have no context on. But culturally, you get to a certain age, you are considered a pretty big head figure of your family, right? I don't know that. But maybe that's what the grandfather's kind of especially since, he goes through this whole ritual of, presenting White
the feather and
also
the sage
just embodiment of being someone that makes choices. Can
I ask about that scene? Because you've probably done homework on this that we're missing some of the cultural stuff. So. The ritual that's happening, the meaning of the white feather, can you give us some context on where you got that information from and what it means?
I am only able to write from my own experiences, right? I mean, that's kind of our limit as a person.
For sure.
And so what I researched were these sort of blessings and prayers. And you'll notice, you've already picked up on it, that there is some very, very, very subtle religious theme in this. And I think there's a tension between sort of this Judeo-Christian and and then something else, which is
Yeah,
undefined.
something old and traditional.
Right, and the something else being undefined is intentional. By the way, I wanted to go in and I wanted to be vague when it came to the Native American influence here, and the reasoning is I didn't have the ability to speak to it on an intimate level because that wasn't my experience growing up.
Yeah.
But what I could do was I could insert an accurate prayer.
Yeah.
I could insert this accurate blessing ritual, which is the way that it occurs, and a handing off, of something that's important. And then the next scene is very intentionally removed of it. It's removed of it. Like we're still in the woods, and it's ethereal and
the
whatnot.
ritual's done.
The ritual's done.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. So now it's just two individual human beings, and now culture is gone, and now everything is gone, and it's just two human beings with their own life experiences talking. And so that's where I tried to write. It was in that space.
I see.
I kind of like that though, like the spirituality being just vague enough that no matter what you believe or kind of where you come from, like there's a relatability of it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And so when it comes to abuse, as far as my experience, and I'm not going to go into deep experiences here, right? But it's something that I think everybody comes into contact with at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think for people who are kind of more aware of it, the question is like, how does it happen? How do people allow it to happen? And one of the things that I've absolutely witnessed in families is that things really have to boil over before anybody does anything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like
someone has not only been in danger, but something horrible has already happened.
It's like we make excuses because they are family.
Sure.
Right.
And the audience, hopefully watching this, is going, what are you talking about, Grandpa? The poor kid's suffering, right?
Yeah.
But
like, call the fucking
right,
cops,
exactly.
man.
Like, what are you doing? It's like it's the same thing anytime that you hear, about a case of
needs to be called.
a case of domestic violence or something like that is going on, and people don't leave. People stay. People make excuses, and other people make excuses. I heard a story. This is secondhand, but I heard a story of a woman who wanted to divorce her husband and leave, and got to her mom, and her mom was like, "No, you need to stay and like keep your marriage
together.
Like the sanctity of your marriage is like important, so you like have to stay." And
coming
so she
from
like
an
went
Asian
back.
background, I've heard this
Coming from
so
a
many
Christian
times.
household,
Yeah.
I've heard this so many
Yeah, and I'm the Christian upbringing as well. So
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's where this comes from.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like almost directly like that parental, like, they're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mean to hurt you. They're suffering themselves.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, okay, I have the awareness, so I can be strong and I can do something about it.
So
And
then is the audience supposed to feel in conflict with the grandfather's words in this scene?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
is that okay?
Yeah, they better.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
I hope
intentional.
So. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that people would kind of go,
What?
No, that's a bad alarm. So that's
But that's
good.
supposed to be like the perspective of like that older cultural view of, again, the victim is accountable for it, not the abuser.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least the victim has some culpability, right?
Yeah.
Can I bring up kind of just a question in terms of character? I think we sort of discussed this when the staff at Arizona Studios kind of read over all the scripts. We just want to, figure things just
Make sure
get a
we can
taste.
read it
Yeah,
tangibly,
get
understandably.
a taste of the scripts.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we kind of brought up was Bess's character in relation to Bobby and their roles in the overall story. For sure, Bobby is there to be that mentor, but then Bess is also there doing something where she is engaging herself into White's life in terms of abuse, and I think Bess is I correct me if I'm wrong, Bess is the first to notice that, hey, she is battered and bruised, and that's not just hockey. Maybe Bess understands or has the life experience of recognizing certain abuse, or certain ways. But what we were...
she also seems like not like in a good and bad way, like a very intrusive person.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
very intrusive.
Right.
But we were wondering if her character and Bobby's character just need to be that singular character. Why have two separate characters is probably my question.
Yeah, I think that is a good way of asking it. I guess in the context of a feature, again, we have so much more time to develop these people and then care for each of them individually. When we cut it down to a short, and this is not just to this particular piece, but to people listening in general who are working on either converting an idea from a feature into a short, or maybe wanting to make a short that is like a proof of concept or something like that. One of the biggest struggles I think all screenwriters face in that is, how do I give up on certain things, or can I let go of certain things? And where do I cross that line? What needs to stay to maintain enough of this that I can really pitch it, sell it, what have you, versus what is there that is just not working in the context of a short as well as it does in a bigger piece. Mm-hmm. And that was something, obviously, we wanted to talk about in a general sense, but also in this particular script, when we were reading it, it did seem kind of like there's a lot of characters to take in such a short amount of time. And an effect of that is, do we get enough attachment to them to care about the outcome? And I think obviously White, I find her character likable. I do think you get attached to her, and I agree with Bobby too. His personality immediately comes across crotchety old man, what have you, coach. That coach player story, I think, is transcendent to the genre.
Right.
I just to just add what you're saying is that everyone, all these characters, they have their singular goal or whatever, what their journey is in your script. And to me, Bobby and Bess, they both have the same goals in terms of wanting to shelter White, they're wanting to help White in a certain way. Obviously, we do get character differences that Bobby is an old man, Bess is an intrusive, person that is willing to go out of her way to,
get involved.
But especially for this short of a script, those two characters can definitely be combined. I can see it that way.
Is that something you'd ever considered, or?
No, it's a great point. What a cool way of looking at it, though. No, I did not consider that. What I was doing. Yeah. This is not a defense, by the way.
No, please.
No,
take
but
it that way at all.
No, but I'm so excited by these discussions, right? Because this is why I do this. What I was doing was I wrote a character of Bess in a specific way to fit a specific role, a specific narrative purpose.
Okay.
And it was the sort of supporting character to Bobby. To motivate Bobby. She was there, she had been kind of in the background this whole time, and he just kind of didn't pay attention to her. And there was this racial tension where they had fallen in love in the 60s, but then didn't do anything about that because he was a public figure and having that...
See, that's some cool context.
I mean, it is really good backstory.
Right.
I kind of got that sense. Why did you describe her being someone white dude versus a brown person? I guess that's what
yeah.
That's how it was described, or just
and
dark
especially
bombshell.
for an older couple,
So I'm glad that you also brought up proof of concept, because that's what this is.
Yeah.
This has always been with the intention of, do you like this? There is more.
There is more.
And so
I think
and so the character of Bess, it was always intended to sort of play out that there's more,
yeah.
right? But instead of playing it that way, again, where the payoff is at the end. I wanted there to be a different kind of payoff. Like, so instead of being like, okay, this is the traditional narrative role, I wanted to get inside of Bess's head and think, well, okay, if I was treated that way, how would I behave? Yeah. Maybe I'd be a little angry. Maybe I would get into people's faces and be like, you know what, this person's on the sidelines, so I'm going to do something about that. Yeah. And, and then, I kind of have Bobby, who doesn't really know how he feels about his own past. And like, so did he go after the career success at the expense of, personal relationship? Yeah. And that's all stuff that's not on the page here that can be got into. But it was interesting now that we're on this topic. As I was going along and believing that I was going to have kind of a climactic confrontation with Bobby. Yeah. And that's how it was in the original script. It was before. Bobby showed up.
Switched it to Bess.
And I switched it. And the interesting thing about it was in that element, because there wasn't a need for a climax there. Yeah. The father character, the old man, just tells White, go ahead, go. Screw you. Get out of my house. I don't want you here anyway, so go. Oh. And so it was something where it was like, I
definitely think this confrontation is a lot saucier.
Right, yeah, right. Well, yeah, it plays as a narrative finale to this piece. Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up, because for those listening and for trying to write a short versus trying to write a feature and how many characters and stuff like that, I'll never be somebody to advocate for writing something formulaic or mathematical or being or limiting yourself to like, oh, I can't do this or I can't do. You can do whatever you want, but there are payoffs, and so I mean, well, there are trade-offs, let's say. Yeah. So like
if you're writing a short, you still have to tell a whole story. It just has to
absolutely. Be and are you running the risk of having your audience not being able to attach completely to a character that you love, that they don't know the backstory to that? That's a great point. Yeah.
And I think we've all faced it. I mean, I think pretty much any beginner screenwriter has been there, where they're like, I have a feature film idea. Right. I'm in film school. I'm a beginner filmmaker, whatever it is. I don't have the budget or the means to pull off that feature. So what I'm going to do is take this feature film idea and I'm going to try and fit it into a much shorter format. And a lot of times, especially when you're a beginning writer, it's just a hot mess, because again, you want to hold on to every little thing that you can, and there is that that audience disconnect of what of this are they taking away, and what am I able to convey that is genuinely compelling and full. And I think in a lot of ways, this story is, I mean, I still think that it works as short. I don't think that by any means it ends where it's what happened next? It still ends good, conclusive enough to the context of what we have for the characters.
Oh, cheers. If I could piggyback on that, I'd like to say, and again, to people listening and who are writers specifically, I want to say this: always be willing to change everything.
Right. Yeah.
Literally. Don't be overprotective. Yeah. At the same time, when you know you've got something, I think you should run with it. Yeah. I've got a script that's at it. I think the final page count is 180 pages exactly. Wow,
that's a hefty ass script.
It's I know, and there are people that are like, no, it won't work, and it's like, well, normally I would agree with you.
But have you read this?
I don't think anyone has a right to say no, it doesn't work.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Tell that to the guys who made the last Avengers film.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
right.
That's BS. Are we allowed to cuss?
Oh, well, I am, so I just assumed that was
bullshit.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, dang. Can I? Sorry, were you gonna continue on with that? I have something else to say, but
I can talk forever.
Okay.
About this particular subject matter.
Alright.
Yeah.
I know it
please
super
continue.
relates to you, yeah.
Please continue.
Well, I think because knowing that context between Bobby and Bess, it, to me, like I had to write it down before I forgot, to me it kind of like went back to what you said in the beginning, where this film is almost showing like that whole struggle and conflict of who your family is, and you get to choose who your family is, or around that sense, right? And for Bess and Bobby, they relate to that because even though they're, obviously they're much older and they came from different times, but they chose to be a family together, but despite skin color, and the differences of that,
Well, and I think people could potentially pick up on that.
Yeah, but I like that it's there, and that it can help White, even if it's a subtle thing, but White is seeing that, if there was a longer script, a longer version of room to add things, you can kind of like have, White, be like explore that little bit of Bobby and Bess, and it also kind of helps with character development for sure. But I think the grandfather.
Just give me 5 more pages, man. Just give me 5 more pages.
the
Always leave them wanting a little more.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
I think the grandfather definitely presents the issue,
Yeah.
and that's good on him for this whole story,
Yeah.
and that to have each character present that issue a different way, I think that kind of like drives the film forward for sure. And maybe that can kind of help with. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it just kind of helps with at least driving your story a certain way if you want to go that route.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
The nice thing about this podcast,
Okay.
just the general, like, when you talk to filmmakers, when you talk to screenwriters, like, I know that obviously when you're watching a story, when you're watching a film, it needs to work on its own in a way. But I also feel like the great thing is like hearing your goals for the story and like the themes you want out of it, like suddenly everything falls into place and it's like, oh yeah, I totally see that. Like I just reading it on my own, I didn't immediately pick that up, but after you've mentioned it and I'm reading it again, I'm like, wow, yeah, I see all of those themes and I see the things you're laying down, and they all kind of tie together in a good way because it all ultimately is about like that family dynamic. So
Right.
I like that. I mean, this is a great piece. We were really lucky to get to read it. It is like definitely we've been running behind schedule all day, so it's definitely around that time. But I don't want to cut anyone off. Do either of you have any closing thoughts that you want to share, or any like final feedback?
Really, all I want to say is I want to express deep gratitude for being here and having the opportunity to sit down and read this little piece of my heart with you guys.
Thank you. I had so much fun. This was a great script to read, and you were amazing to speak with today and to go through your script, and thanks for sharing all your awesome ideas with us.
Oh, thank you very much.
And whether it be on this table again or on the screen, man, I want to see more of White and her journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree.
For sure.
She's got more to say, don't
Oh,
worry.
yeah.
For those of you listening right now, definitely feel free to send in some comments. Whether you're listening on SoundCloud, Facebook, or YouTube, feel free to comment at us. And if you're listening somewhere where you can't comment at us, feel free to send us your comments at info@arizonastudios.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we're happy to pass that along to Jim. Thank you for listening, and we hope this helped you out, and we'll hear from you next time on New Script on the Block.